We're going to now start a section where we look more closely at linear functions. Remember, linear functions are functions that have exponent of 1 on the x value. One thing you'll need to know how to do is how to calculate the slope of a line. Well, the slope formula is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, where you have two ordered pairs, x1 comma y1 and x2 comma y2. So those numbers, y2, y1, that doesn't stand for y squared or anything. Those are just identifiers for ordered pairs that you will be given. One thing before we get into slope, let me review how the zeros will work. Since we are dealing with a formula that is a fraction, if you recall 3 over 0, when you simplify that, we call that undefined. Remember, you can never have a 0 denominator or it's undefined. However, if you have 0 on top, 0 over 3, simplified, that is 0 itself. You can have a slope of 0. The slope that you calculate will actually determine if a line rises, which means it's increasing, if it falls, which means it's decreasing, if it's horizontal, or if it's vertical. So by looking at the slope, I can tell basically what a line looks like. Now let's go ahead and calculate slope. When I calculate slope, I take my two ordered pairs and I label them x1, y1 and x2, y2. And then I substitute it into the formula. Now, slope is normally indicated by a little script M. And they use M instead of S because M is the first letter in the Greek word for slope, but I can't pronounce it, so I won't even try. But anytime you see that italics M, that stands for slope. So slope is equal to, we take the y2, which is -1, and we subtract the y1, which is 4. We take the x2, which is -4, and we subtract the x1, which is -3, and we'll work that out. What we get is -6 on top. Notice the negative on bottom becomes a positive. That's -4 plus 3, which will give me -6 over -1, and that is +6. Since that is a +6, we say that this line is increasing, or it rises from left to right. Now let's do example B. I again will label my ordered pairs x1, y1, x2, y2. I will substitute it into the slope formula. Take my y2, 5, then I subtract my y1, -2. Take my x2, 4, I subtract my x1, which is also 4. The double negative becomes a positive, so that's really 5 plus 2 over 0, which is 7 over 0. But recall, up here, anytime you have a 0 denominator, it's undefined. So we say that that slope is undefined. Now, what type of line has an undefined slope? It will always be the vertical line. So you can go ahead and memorize that if you need to, but a vertical line always has an undefined slope. Last example. I'll label my numbers x1, y1, x2, y2. And then I substitute it into the formula. So slope equals 9 minus 9, -1 minus 7, which is 0 over -8, which is 0. Now 0 is the answer, okay, as compared to the undefined in the previous answer. Anytime 0 is on top, it is 0 as the answer. What type of line has a 0 straight across slope. Zero slope always occurs when you have a horizontal line. So that's how you'll know what has a zero slope. Now, there's another important formula, if you would, that goes along with linear functions. First is called the point-slope form of a line. The point-slope form of a line is this: y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. The m again is your slope, and the x1, y1 represents an ordered pair. A second important equation for linear functions is the slope-intercept form. It is y equals mx plus b. Now we already said that m, let me go ahead and make that equal sign a little cleaner. We already said that m represents the slope, but we haven't had anything like this b. This b is what we call the y-intercept. We had studied y-intercepts when we had first started graphing earlier in our semester. Now let's go through and work an example. It says write an equation in the point-slope form, so I have to use that equation, where the slope is 6, so that means m equals 6. And it passes through this point. Label your point x1, y1. Then you will take the formula, y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And you substitute in the numbers you know. I have y minus negative 5 equals 6 times x minus 2. All you need to do is simplify anything that has a double negative. So I notice I had a double negative right here. So that would be y plus 5 equals 6 times x minus 2. That is the correct answer for the point-slope form. So you just leave that answer if that's what you're asked for. However, in part B of this problem, we are asked to write your answer from part A in the slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. So what that means to do is we must take our answer and solve for the y. So let me rewrite my answer down here. Y plus 5 equals 6 times x minus 2. I can distribute the 6, and I will get 6x minus 12. That's equal to my y plus 5. I can move over my 5, and it becomes a negative. And that will give me y equals 6x minus 17. So that would be my final answer in slope-intercept form. Another equation that is sometimes used with linear functions is called the general form. The general form is written with the x term, then the y term, and then the constant term equal to 0. Now, this is not a very user-friendly form, so normally we change it around and we convert it to the slope-intercept form, because slope-intercept is also called our working form for lines. Remember, it is y equals mx plus b. So we need to solve this for y. I'm going to move over my 12 and move over my 3x. So I will have 6y equals negative 3x plus 12. Notice the sign changes. Then I will divide everything by 6. I do it individually so that I can see the mx and the plus b from the formula separately. So y equals, now negative 3 over 6 is a fraction, and it reduces to be negative 1/2. I have my x. Then 12 divided by 6 is 2. So this would be the general form converted to slope-intercept. From this form, we can now tell the slope. The slope is the number in front of the x. That is the m value. So my slope is -1/2. The y-intercept is the number behind the x at the end of the problem. So that would be 2. Now we're going to use this slope and y-intercept to quickly sketch the graph. To use the slope and y-intercept, you will graph the y-intercept first. So on the y-axis, go up here to the +2 and plot your point. Now, the slope is -1/2. Put the negative sign in top with the top of the number. If that number is negative, that tells me to go down 1 unit and go to the right 2 units. If you have a negative in your slope, always put it with the top number. So I'm going to count, starting at the 2, I'm going to count down 1 unit and then over to the right 2 units, which puts me right here. And that's where I will put a second point. If you're using a homework software like MyLab, when you click that second point, you will automatically have the line show up like this. Notice that the line is falling or decreasing. That's because the slope is negative. Now, what if you had a slope that had been positive? If you ever have a positive slope, then you would go up the unit and then go over to the right. What if you had a slope that was a whole number, like a 3? Then you just write that as 3/1. The top would be positive and the bottom, so you go up 3 units and to the right 1 unit. That bottom number will always move you to the right. However, the top number, depending if it's negative or positive, will move you down or up.